In a determined effort to maintain order, Victoria, the HOA president, tries to evict a black man from his home, unaware that the property is inviolable. As the truth slowly emerges, a fiery confrontation begins, thrusting the story into the heart of questions about justice and morality. Make sure to subscribe and like our YouTube channel so you don't miss any episodes of this riveting story. The late afternoon sun casts long shadows across the freshly mowed lawns of Cedar Grove community in Oregon. Ethan Turner, in his mid-30s, steps out of a moving truck parked in front of a quaint two-story house with Victorian details and a wraparound porch. He is dressed casually in jeans and a t-shirt, looking slightly out of place with his urban demeanor amid the tranquil suburban setting. Ethan wipes sweat from his brow as he lifts a heavy box labeled "Books" from the truck. Setting it down with a thud, he surveys his new surroundings, thinking about the slower pace of life here compared to New York City. He's looking for peace, a place to start anew after a chaotic year. As he carries the box up the steps to his new home, he notices a woman across the street who pretends to water her flowers while watching him. Ethan gives a friendly wave, but receives only a slight nod in response. He calls out, "Beautiful day, isn't it?" The woman looks up, startled by the interaction, murmurs, "Yes, quite," and adds, "Welcome to Cedar Grove," before quickly retreating into her house. Feeling slightly amused and undeterred, Ethan returns to the truck. A group of children on bikes stops in front of his house, whispering and casting curious glances his way. He smiles and waves, receiving a few shy waves back before the children pedal away. Soon after, a middle-aged man walking his dog approaches. Ethan extends a hand, names Ethan. The man, after a brief hesitation, shakes it and introduces himself as Roger. "Heard you bought the old McKinley place. From the city, right?" Ethan confirms, and they exchange a few words about Cedar Grove's quiet nature. Roger advises, "We like things quiet around here. Keep to that, and you'll fit in just fine." He then resumes his walk, his dog pulling on the leash. As Ethan watches Roger walk away, he stands on his new porch under the setting sun, contemplating the isolation amidst tranquility. He turns back into his house, resolute in his determination to make Cedar Grove his home, ready to face any challenges and determined to win over the community one neighbor at a time. On a bright sunny morning, he is in his front yard, working on the garden of his new home. Wearing gloves and a sun hat, he kneels, planting colorful tulips and marigolds, arranging his gardening tools and nursery plants around him, creating a vibrant display of colors and greenery. He occasionally looks up, hoping for friendly faces, but instead, notices curtains twitching, as if his actions were being monitored. She approaches with a brisk walk, impeccably dressed, exuding authority. Her expression is stern as she observes his activities with a critical eye. "Good morning, Mr. Turner. I see you're making yourself quite at home." "Good morning. Yes, just getting some gardening done. It's a beautiful day for it, isn't it?" "Indeed, it is. However, while your enthusiasm is commendable, there are community standards to consider. We pride ourselves on maintaining a uniform aesthetic in Cedar Grove. I was just planting some flowers. I thought it would brighten up the place." She pulls out a folder filled with documents. "Yes, about that. While flowers are generally encouraged, your choice and arrangement of plants, and especially that fountain, could potentially violate our community's aesthetic guidelines." She elaborates on the specific guidelines, citing clauses from the HOA rulebook. She discusses previous incidents where residents faced fines for non-compliance, stressing the importance of adhering to the rules. Feeling a mix of frustration and disbelief, he tries to reason with her, explaining his intentions were purely to beautify his home, not disrupt the community's harmony. However, she remains unyielding, suggesting that he attend the next HOA meeting to better understand the community's values and expectations. As she leaves, she points out that the community values conformity and order above all. Her parting words leave him contemplative and slightly troubled about his place in Cedar Grove. He watches as she walks away, then turns his attention back to his garden. Determined not to let this setback dampen his spirits, he realizes that adjusting to life in Cedar Grove might be more challenging than he anticipated. He spends the rest of the day researching Cedar Grove's history, learning about its founders, and understanding the deep-rooted values of the community. He prepares himself for the upcoming HOA meeting, planning to propose a more inclusive approach to community guidelines that respects individual expressions while maintaining overall harmony. The Cedar Grove Community Center buzzes with activity as residents gather for the monthly Homeowners Association meeting on a crisp autumn afternoon. Chairs are arranged in neat rows facing a small stage where the HOA board sits behind a long table, and posters detailing upcoming community events and projects adorn the walls. Arriving early to get a feel for the dynamics, Ethan observes the diverse group settling in. From elderly couples who've been part of Cedar Grove for decades to younger families recently moved in, the room is a mosaic of the community's past and its evolving future. He chooses a seat at the back, preferring to stay under the radar until he better understands the environment. As the meeting kicks off, Victoria Reed, the HOA President, stands to welcome everyone. Her commanding presence is undeniable, and her voice carries clearly across the room. She starts with an overview of the agenda, proudly noting recent accomplishments like the newly installed playground equipment, before segueing into more contentious issues such as proposed changes to the landscaping regulations. Ethan listens intently, noting how residents react, nods, murmurs of agreement, occasional whispers of dissent. When the floor opens to the financial budget for the upcoming year, he sees his chance to contribute. Raising his hand and receiving a nod from Victoria, he stands, introduces himself, and thanks the community for their warm welcome. With expertise in urban planning, he suggests that Cedar Grove could benefit from adopting eco-friendly landscaping practices to reduce costs and enhance aesthetic appeal. The suggestion ignites immediate interest among some of the younger residents but also skepticism from traditionalists, including Victoria. The room becomes a lively forum of debate. Ethan answers questions, expanding on his ideas with examples from successful case studies and discussing potential funding sources for such initiatives. During this exchange, a subplot surfaces as the Martins, a young couple, express their support for Ethan's ideas and share their frustrations with how their past proposals were handled by the HOA. This revelation opens a broader discussion on the need for transparency and inclusiveness in the community's decision-making processes. As the debate intensifies, Victoria calls for order and acknowledges the validity of points raised by Ethan and the Martins. She proposes forming a new committee to explore sustainable community management practices and invites Ethan and other interested residents to join. This marks a tentative step toward embracing change. As the meeting adjourns, several residents approach Ethan, thanking him for his input and expressing their enthusiasm about getting involved. Even Victoria, though cautious, commends Ethan for his constructive approach and suggests they meet to discuss the committee's scope further. Ethan leaves the meeting feeling a mix of cautious optimism and a sense of accomplishment. He's aware of the challenges ahead but also senses a growing alliance with like-minded residents, hopeful about his role in shaping Cedar Grove's future. Ethan's backyard is transformed into a lively gathering space on a mild Saturday afternoon. Colorful string lights crisscross above while garden lanterns dotted around cast a soft glow as the sun begins to set. A large grill emits enticing aromas, with Ethan expertly flipping burgers and turning skewers of marinated vegetables. A long table covered with a red and white checkered tablecloth is laden with an array of dishes, potato salad, coleslaw, freshly baked rolls, and a variety of dips. As guests begin to arrive in small groups, Ethan greets them with a warm smile and a cold beverage, homemade lemonade or iced tea. The crowd is diverse, including families with young children, elderly couples, and middle-aged professionals. Each guest contributes to the communal spirit by bringing a small dish or beverage. The children dart around the yard, their laughter mingling with the upbeat tunes from a speaker setup near the patio. Ethan strikes up a conversation with Clara, a middle-aged school teacher with a keen interest in community gardening. They discuss the possibility of starting a community garden project that could serve as both an educational tool for local schools and a source of fresh produce for residents. I've always believed that gardens are wonderful spaces for learning and sharing. With your background, Ethan, I think we could create something special here, Clara suggests. I love that idea, Clara. It's a perfect way to bring the community together and teach the kids about sustainability and healthy eating, Ethan replies enthusiastically. As the barbecue continues, Ethan finds common ground with Tom, a previously skeptical neighbor who is a hobbyist woodworker. They bond over their shared interest in craftsmanship and sustainable materials. I saw the benches you made for your porch, Ethan. Impressive work. What do you think about hosting a weekend workshop? We could build birdhouses, maybe even some furniture for the community center, Tom proposes. That sounds fantastic, Tom. It'd be a great way to engage more neighbors and pass on some skills, Ethan responds, pleased with the suggestion. During the meal, a minor conflict arises between two neighbors over parking issues. Seeing the opportunity to mediate, Ethan intervenes with a proposal. What if we organize a community meeting to discuss these issues? We could set up a small committee to handle disputes and come up with solutions that work for everyone, he suggests. The idea is well received, and the disagreement quickly dissipates, replaced by a constructive discussion about community governance. Later in the evening, Ethan unveils a dessert station featuring his homemade apple pie and a DIY sundae bar, which becomes a hit among both kids and adults. The festive atmosphere encourages open conversation, and many guests express their appreciation for Ethan's efforts to bring the community together. As the event winds down, the guests help with cleanup, turning it into a communal effort. This act of teamwork leaves Ethan feeling hopeful and accepted. He chats with Victoria, who, despite her initial reservations, commends him for the successful gathering. Today was about more than just food and fun. It was about laying down the roots for a community that thrives on cooperation and mutual respect. I see a lot of potential here, Ethan reflects on the day's events as he helps clean up. The scene closes with Ethan standing in his now quiet backyard, watching the last of the guests leave. The lanterns flicker softly in the twilight, and a sense of contentment washes over him. He's optimistic about his future in Cedar Grove, confident that he can foster lasting relationships and navigate the complexities of community life. Late one afternoon, Ethan is in his front yard, tending to the vibrant flower beds he recently planted. The tranquility of the moment is interrupted by the sight of Victoria approaching along the sidewalk. Her brisk pace and stern expression suggest she means business, and she's carrying a folder that looks ominously thick with documents. She stops at Ethan's fence, firmly planting herself there but not entering the yard. She waves a piece of paper from the folder. Good afternoon, Ethan. We need to discuss some issues that have come to the board's attention, Victoria announces, not bothering with pleasantries. Ethan sets down his watering can and walks over, his expression guarded yet open to discussion. Good afternoon, Victoria. What seems to be the problem? It's about these new changes you've implemented around your house and some behaviors that don't align with our community standards, she explains, handing him a document. Ethan takes the document and quickly scans it. His brow furrows as he reads through several complaints. His garden modifications allegedly exceed community standards, and his informal gatherings are said to disturb the neighborhood's peace. I was under the impression that my changes were minor and within our rights. And my gatherings have only been small get-togethers, Ethan replies, trying to keep his tone even. Regardless, there have been complaints. Your fence color is not on our approved list, and the gatherings, however small, extend later than our community guidelines allow, Victoria asserts, her voice firm. Ethan feels a mix of frustration and disbelief. He tries to remain composed. Victoria, I'm trying to be a good neighbor, but it feels like these rules are being enforced selectively. Can we discuss this at the next HOA meeting? Victoria nods, her posture stiff. We can bring it up, but understand that the community values its peace and order. I suggest you make the necessary changes to avoid further action. With that, she turns and leaves, her message delivered. As Victoria disappears down the sidewalk, Ethan watches her go, a plan beginning to form. He decides it's time to take a more proactive stance in understanding and perhaps influencing the community's governance. That evening, Ethan is at his computer, researching local laws and HOA guidelines. He meticulously notes inconsistencies in the enforcement and begins documenting everything. He reaches out to other neighbors via email, subtly asking about their experiences with the HOA. Some neighbors respond with similar frustrations, sharing feelings that the rules are applied inconsistently. Motivated by these discussions, Ethan organizes a small meeting with a few neighbors at his house. They gather in his living room, discussing the HOA's actions and considering forming a more formal response. The group agrees on transparency and fairness as their main talking points, planning to challenge the status quo at the upcoming HOA meeting. As the scene closes, Ethan is seen preparing documents and notes for the HOA meeting. His resolve is firm, and the support of his newfound allies bolsters his confidence. He is determined to bring change, not just for his benefit but for the entire community that seems to be under the thumb of overly strict governance. In the quiet of his home office late in the evening, Ethan is surrounded by documents, zoning laws, and HOA guidelines scattered across his desk. The only light comes from a desk lamp, casting a focused glow over his work. He meticulously pores over a large map of Cedar Grove and simultaneously cross-references property deeds on his laptop. His concentration is palpable. As he sifts through the community's regulatory framework and past actions of the HOA, he uncovers a series of discrepancies and loopholes. His attention sharpens when he discovers a shocking clerical error linked to a recent auction. His purchase included not only his house but also several key parcels of land within the community, crucially including the lot where the community center stands and, unexpectedly, Victoria's own residence. This can't be right. How could they have overlooked this, he murmurs to himself. Double-checking the documents confirms that the sales were legitimate and binding. The realization of the leverage this gives him sparks a strategic flame in his eyes. He begins to outline his approach for the upcoming HOA meeting, focusing on transparency, accountability, and the fair enforcement of rules. He drafts a presentation, ensuring all his points are backed by solid documentation. Seeking professional guidance, Ethan calls Laura, a local attorney and a trusted friend, to discuss his findings. Her voice fills the room from the speakerphone, offering legal strategies and moral support. Make sure you have everything documented, Ethan. And when you present this, be clear about your intentions. This could change the community's governance and maybe even improve it, she advises. Thanks, Laura. I'm not looking to cause chaos. I just want to make sure that the rules apply equally to everyone, Ethan replies, his tone resolute. He spends several hours preparing his presentation for the HOA meeting, including visuals of the documents and creating a concise, factual narrative. Each slide is crafted to present his case unequivocally, aiming to ensure the HOA cannot easily dismiss his claims. After reviewing his notes one final time, Ethan reflects on the potential impact of his discovery. He knows revealing this at the HOA meeting will undoubtedly stir significant controversy but also holds the potential to pave the way for fairer governance. His resolve to make Cedar Grove a better place is reaffirmed, fueled by a desire for justice and equality within the community. Ethan glances at a family photo on his desk, drawing strength from the reasons he moved to Cedar Grove, to build a peaceful life in a fair and friendly community. With a deep breath, he turns off his desk lamp and heads to bed, mentally preparing for the confrontation and hopeful change that tomorrow might bring. The Cedar Grove Community Center is filled to capacity, the air thick with anticipation and tension as residents gather for the crucial HOA meeting. Whispers and speculative glances fill the room as Ethan walks in, carrying a binder filled with documents. His presence commands attention, and his demeanor reflects a blend of determination and calm. Victoria, presiding over the meeting, opens with a brief introduction of the agenda, which notably includes Ethan's proposals and general community grievances. As the discussion proceeds, the room's atmosphere becomes increasingly charged. When it's Ethan's turn to speak, he rises, addressing the room with a steady and resonant voice. "Thank you for giving me the floor. Today, I stand before you not just as a homeowner but as someone deeply invested in the well-being and future of Cedar Grove. Over the past weeks, I've discovered some unsettling truths about our community's governance and land ownership that affect us all." He presents his findings, showing documents that reveal clerical errors and his unexpected ownership of key parcels of land, including the community center and Victoria's property. The evidence is displayed on a screen, clear and undeniable. This is not about personal gain but about transparency, fairness, and the democratic values that should run through the very foundation of our community. I propose we use this opportunity to revise our governance, ensuring that all members have a voice and that our regulations serve the community's best interests, not just a select few. The revelations cause a stir among the attendees, with murmurs and gasps punctuating the air. Victoria attempts to regain control, visibly shaken by the disclosures. "This is highly irregular. We need time to verify these claims and consider our next steps." "I agree," Ethan responds, "and I invite the board to work with me and any interested residents to form a new committee aimed at restructuring our HOA policies and correcting any discrepancies in our land records." His proposal finds resonance with many in the room, leading to nods of agreement and supportive shouts. The meeting concludes with a decision to temporarily suspend any major HOA decisions until a thorough review can be conducted. As people start to disperse, many approach Ethan, offering thanks and expressing their support. He engages in discussions, planning next steps with a group of supportive neighbors. They talk about upcoming community projects and the formation of the new committee. The scene closes with Ethan looking out of the community center window, watching children play outside. A hopeful smile spreads across his face as he contemplates the new beginnings and brighter future for Cedar Grove, symbolizing his transition from an outsider to a pivotal community leader.